The title of the message is UDONGO, Free Up the Land. And it will be delivered by our brother, Tafadzwa Shakara Mbandaka.
Tenamwari, giving thanks unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe, Kudzai, Mudzimu Mukuru. We give praises unto our great ancestors because our ancestors are worthy to be praised. Abibi Fahodie, Abibi Tumi, African liberation and African power for all African people. Tenamwari. Tenamwari. Who are we?
Africa.
What do we want?
Freedom.
How are we going to get it?
Fight for it.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
Now.
What are we going to use?
Voodoo.
All right. Tenamwari. If we have money and do not have character, the money belongs to someone else. Character, Iwa, in the Yoruba language, is what we are looking for. If we have children and do not have character, the children belong to someone else. Character, Iwa, is what we are looking for. Character. If we have a house and do not have character, the house belongs to someone else. Character is what we are looking for. Character. If we have clothes but do not have character, the clothes belong to someone else. Character is what we are looking for. Character. All good things we have, if we do not have character, these good things belong to someone else. And so, it's character. Iwa, we are looking for character.
That's no revolution. Revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. The white man knows what a revolution is. He knows that the black revolution is worldwide in scope and in nature. The black revolution is sweeping Asia, sweeping Africa. It's rearing its head in Latin America. The Cuban Revolution, that's a revolution. They overturned the system. It's based on land. A revolutionary wants land so he can set up his own nation, an independent nation. These Negroes aren't asking for no nation. They're trying to crawl back on the plantation. When you want a nation, that's called nationalism. All the revolutions that's going on in Asia, in Africa today are based on what? Black nationalism. A revolutionary is a black nationalist. He wants a nation. I was reading some beautiful words by Reverend Cleage pointing out why he couldn't get together with someone else here in the city. Because all of them were afraid of being identified with black nationalism. If you're afraid of black nationalism, you're afraid of revolution. And if you love revolution, you love black nationalism.
So, we've just heard a word from our ancestors. yeah, in two different spheres. The first is our more ancient Yoruba ancestors, yeah, in the sacred wisdom that is known as the Odu Ifa, which is sacred wisdom of our Yoruba ancestors, yeah. And the reading was concerning character. And character in relationship to worldly possessions. And the worth of the worldly possessions is defined and described in the reading not by our capacity to own the possession, but our capacity to have character within the ownership or the custodianship of the possession. If we don't have character, even when we don't have it. It's an illusion. And we can have things in our possession and not know what to do with it because we lack the character to make best use of what it is we have. Is everybody with me so far? So I want you to bear this word in mind as we go through the message, brothers and sisters. Because there could be a message on this word alone. There's a whole heap of wisdom in this word. And then we heard from one of our more recent ancestors, Papa Omowale Malcolm X. Yeah? And I'm going to go past the picture because it's playing automatically, which is good, all right? However, he's in the message, not only because of the fact that the word that he spoke is pertinent to the message, i.e., there is a connection between custodianship of land and the concept of nationhood, but he's there also because he happens to be born in the month of May. Yeah? Right? You know what I'm saying? He happens to be born on the 19th of May, and so it's always good to honor Omowale Malcolm X. Yeah? There's never a time where it's not good to honor Omowale Malcolm X. All right? But he makes it clear to us that if we're speaking about revolution and don't have an appreciation for the concept of land, we don't truly understand what revolution is. We have to know and have an appreciation for the concept of land. But our appreciation of the concept of land has to be multifaceted. Why? Because land is a multifaceted resource. And I hope to give explanation to that throughout the message today. The message is entitled UHURU UDONGO. Say it with me. UHURU UDONGO. Free up the land.
Free up the land.
Free up the land.
Free up the land.
Now in English we would say free the land. In Patois we say free up the land.
Free up the land.
And UHURU UDONGO is Swahili, Kiswahili language. Yeah? Technically speaking, the term Udongo translates as soil. The word that translates as land is Ardi, yeah, A-R-D-H-I, yeah. But I wanted to use a word that relates more specifically to soil, and you'll see why as the message goes forward. At the same time, I like the rhythm of Udongo. It does sound, you know what I mean? You know, yeah, it has rhythm, yeah. And Uhuru means freedom, and Uhuru is important terminology, especially in the celebration of Africa Liberation Day, because it was popularized by the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, also known as the Mau Mau. But the proper name for the organization, for the army, is the Kenya what? Land and Freedom Army. There's a connection between land and freedom. And it was the so-called Mau Mau who popularized the term Uhuru and made Uhuru a popular phraseology within the African liberation fight. And so in bringing the Kenya Land and Freedom Army to our consciousness this evening, I also want to dedicate the message to the name, the spirit, the family, and the community of Mama Mukami Kimati. For those who are not aware, Mama Mukami was a member of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. She was a combatant in the army. She was also the wife of one of its field marshals, Baba Dedan Kimati, who was assassinated by the British in the year 1956. And as Omowale Malcolm X teaches, it took for the Mau Mau to bring liberation not just to Kenya, but basically the entirety of Africa, because he said the Mau Mau went on a no-holds-bar liberation warfare. It wasn't a PR campaign, yeah? They weren't trying to negotiate. They knew who the enemy was. They recognized that the enemy had stolen their land, and they picked up the tools of warfare and went to war with no negotiation. And the enemy was concerned about the fact that the spirit of the Mau Mau would sweep through the entirety of the African continent and the African world. And so they captured Baba Dedan Kimati and buried his body in an unmarked grave, so that his grave would not become a shrine that would inspire the continuation of the liberation fight. And Mama Mukami and her family, her children, looked for the remains of their husband and their father for over 60 years. Never to be found. We thought we had found it in the year 2019. It turned out not to be the case. Or I know we can't find the remains of Baba Dedan Kimati. But I became aware, to my own shame, of the fact that Mama Mukami was still alive when I read the story some years ago about the fact that they were still looking for the remains. I knew her name, never knew she was still alive. In her 90s. She died at the age of 96 on near day, or Thursday, a couple days ago. Is everybody with me? Yeah? And there's so much I could say about this, but we have to remember that many of our ancestors who sacrificed on the battlefield, many of our elders, who sacrificed on the battlefield are still with us. And many of us, not enough of us, know their names. And so I want to dedicate the message today to Mama Mukami and all of the freedom fighters of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. Can we hail them, please? I have a confession. When I realized, that the message was going to be scheduled the day after Fidem King's coronation, I entertained the thought for a split second, to change the subject of the message to something that would allow me to grain at that a little piece more. And I rejected that suggestion immediately. And then when Mama Mukami passed away, I took it as a sign. This is supposed to be the message for today, because it's in the Kenya what? Land and Freedom Army. You understand? So I want to give thanks to Mama Mukami for that personal inspiration also. So we're here honoring and observing Africa Liberation Day. Now, popularly speaking, there's a thing called Africa Day today that the African Union observes. They take the liberation out of the day. All right? But as Pan-Africanists, we keep the liberation in on the day because we recognize that liberation is still a goal to be achieved. But what is liberation? That's a good question, right? Well, in the Al-Qaeda and the Revivalist movement, we define liberation as the acquisition of the power to be masters of our own destiny. Come on. This means to have control over every aspect of our lives, with the capacity to define, defend, and develop ourselves, thus determining our own destiny. Is everybody with me? Yeah. Key terminology, acquisition of the power. All right? Let's move on. Then we outline what we call euphemisms, which are weak terminologies that are designed to trivialize, neutralize, and pacify and divert us from our fight for total liberation. Come on. Yeah, words like independence, equality, integration, equal rights, and multiculturalism, and multiracialism. Yeah, these are all euphemisms. And it's important to identify these things because sometimes we can take these terminologies, some of it is good stuff, yeah? But we can take this terminology and make it the goal in and of itself. And the goal is liberation.
That's right.
So anti-racism is good, but anti-racism is a poor substitute for liberation. Total liberation. You following me? And then I highlight now 3 buzz terms that are popular in the present political economy that I consider to be our primary terminologies of diversion. One of them is democracy. Yes? Yeah, so we're not trying to achieve liberation, we're trying to achieve democracy. And democracy is a substitute for liberation. Then now we have development. And development goals and development index and so on and so forth. And development is supposed to be a substitute for liberation. And then now you have globalization, where the world becomes a global community. Yes? One world global community. This is also supposed to be a substitute for liberation. The issue with this is that all of these terminologies are defined by the geopolitical West, the European imperialists. Democracy is a political terminology. Development is an economic terminology. Globalization is a cultural terminology. So when we take on these terminologies as our goal, what that means is that we are going to be politically, economically, and culturally orientated towards Europe and Europeans.
That's right.
And they will be setting our agenda rather than us setting our agenda.
Yeah.
But liberation is the acquisition of the power to be masters of our own destiny, which means to define and defend our interests. But first, we need to define it. To define, defend, and to develop our interests. The first D is what? Define. So we have to have our own terminology. And our ancestors through our liberation movements have used words like liberation. Are you following me? So we have to be clear that the goal is still liberation. But Mama Marima Annie teaches that we have to be more specific. Yeah? Liberation in pursuit of specifically what? Yeah? And so as Garveyites, we talk about universal African nationalism. Yeah, we talk about race first. Yeah? Which is understanding ourselves as a geopolitical entity as an African race. We talk about self-reliance, which is building institutions to serve our own interests as an African race. We talk about African spiritual orthodoxy, which is seeing divinity within ourselves as an African race. And we talk about nationhood, which is the ultimate form of social organization on the human level. So we build nations for ourselves as an African race. Mama Marima Ali says, without our cultural and historical connection, we are not a people. It is the basis of our sovereignty. And she defines sovereignty in terms of 5 main aspects: our self-governance, our self-reliance, our self-determination, our economic independence. So not just flag and national anthem independence, our economic independence, and our self-defense. The message today is going to be focused on the latter 2 primarily, but all of them in general. Are you following me? Who are we?
African.
Are you sure? There's a lot of confusion around that today. And that's why we're failing to be race first, because we don't know what it means to be an African. Somebody said us that we're not African. And we've got to be somebody else. We're either beyond African, humanity, and we are humanity. Let's not get twisted. We are human. But as Papa Garvey said, there is no humanity that begins before yourself. So we are African. That makes sense? All right. So, all of this presupposes the idea that if we're going to be pursuing liberation, then we have to be about the business of cultivating the consciousness of liberation and the character of liberation. That means our thoughts and our behavior must be commensurate with what it takes to be a liberated people. If our consciousness and our character is not liberation oriented, we will not achieve liberation.
Bring the word. Bring the word. Bring the word.
And the extent to which we haven't achieved liberation in this day and age is a result of the fact that collectively our collective consciousness and our collective character as African people is not conducive to achieving the goal of liberation. We exist within a different consciousness, and our context produces a different character. So we have to begin to analyze the context in which we're living that is producing a particular consciousness and a particular character. Papa Garvey teaches about sterling character. And he says that with sterling character, you can destroy a world and rebuild it. If we are going to liberate ourselves, we have to be able to destroy a world and rebuild one. And quite literally, that is the challenge that faces African people. There's a world that needs to be destroyed. We saw that world blazed across our 10 live vision screen the whole of yesterday. That world has to be destroyed.
That's right.
But let's not fool ourselves, brothers and sisters. We say Babylon falling, like Babylon falling is inevitable. Like Babylon falling is going to be a coincidence. If Babylon fall, it has to be and it must be by these hands. We are the agents of the fall of Babylon. And if we don't step into that consciousness and that character, Babylon not gonna fall. So when we say Babylon falling, it is a call to arms. It's a call to work. It's a call to cultivate consciousness and character. And so in analyzing and assessing our current condition, the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah teaches us about neocolonialism, the terminology that he puts forward to identify the current or the context in which he was writing in 1965. The book is very prophetic. I encourage everybody to read it. Yeah? He wrote this book and published it in 1965. Omowale Malcolm X, who we honored a while ago, was assassinated in February of 1965. A year later, in February of 1966, the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown in a coup that was planned in Britain and in America for the purpose of instituting the system that he was writing about in this book, neo-colonialism. He says the essence of neo-colonialism is that the state, which is subject to it, is in theory independent, in theory, and has all the outward trappings of international sovereignty. Your president, your prime minister is black, they look like you. The whole of your cabinet black, them look like you. You have a flag, and an anthem, and all these things. In reality, its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from outside. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
So let's go from 1965 right up until today, and let's see the extent to which this is still a reality for African people.
Break it down.
Yeah? We have to be able to define our reality for ourselves and explain and decide whether this is a sufficient context and reality for us to be existing within. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this reading is taken from a document called We Charge Colonialism, which was put together by a coalition of organizations last year entitled An African Unity Movement for development. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
So this is a breakdown of the condition in Zambia, in Southeast Africa as it stands right now. In 2021, imperialism still pervades on the African continent. Listen carefully. The case of Vedanta Resources, majority owner of Konkola copper mines, Zambia's largest copper producing mine, exemplifies the point. In the 90s, it took advantage of Zambia's economic crisis to purchase Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines. The development agreement that secured the deal committed them, i.e. the Zambian government and the Zambian people, through the Konkola copper mine to paying mineral royalties of just 0.6% in an industry where 5 to 10% has been the average. I'm not expecting everybody to understand the technicalities here. Just overstand here. 0.6% is what the companies are paying to the Zambian people in an industry where 5 to 10% is the standard, the average payment. Does that really make sense? Yeah? You're only following the thing? All right? Okay. In 2006 to 2007, they paid the Zambian government just 6.1 million on over $1 billion in extracted copper ore. The agreement had also written in it a 20-year stability period to safeguard against future policy reforms. That means the government cannot change the law in any way that would infringe upon this arrangement for the next 20 years. Stability period. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
All right, let's go forward, yeah? Listen carefully because there's a lot of technicalities and details here that we need to pay attention to. The impact of these decisions are a perpetual state of underdevelopment, crippling Africa's ability to fund public service traditions, things like hospital and school, and so on and so forth, and develop their economies. Compounding that is the environmental damage. Is everybody hearing me?
Yeah.
The environmental damage. Konkola copper mines have also been implicated in serious incidents of environmental mismanagement and compromising the health of the locals. The most serious being when sulfur dioxide emissions from its smelters were being released into drinking water and silting local rivers. Accusations of labor rights abuses and draconian employment practices persist too. Laborers are said to be paid as little as £37 a month. And them say, we are living a cost of living crisis. £37 a month. £114 below the country's average living expenses of £151 a month. It is a mistake to believe Britain's colonial tendencies are a thing of the past.
Come on.
In 2013, during the Conservative and Liberal Democrat coalition, the government created the High-Level Propensity Partnership Initiative, an initiative to enable British companies access to the continent's raw materials in exchange for British aid. Yeah? There's another slide, but I'm going to cut it for the sake of time.
It's a bad deal.
You get the point?
Yeah.
Do you get the point?
Yeah.
Let's go somewhere else. Let's go to Jamaica. Because everywhere we're there, the situation is the same. Let's go to Jamaica, the land of wood and water. But if we do not have character, the wood and water belongs to someone else. That's Wagwan. Some brothers and sisters may be familiar with Wagwan in a cockpit country. Yeah? Taken from a couple articles. In 2021, Jamaica's Minister of Transport and Mining, Robert Montague, announced that the government had revised the special mining lease governing the lands in cockpit country, open to mineral extraction. In this particular instance, we're talking about bauxite, which is essential for the production of aluminium. All right? Specifically, the lands for the mining company Noranda Jamaica Bauxite Partners. Noranda specializes in mining and exporting a metal ore called bauxite, which creates aluminium. Going further, Jamaica's cockpit country is still under threat from bauxite mining, which would remove forest cover, block and pollute waterways, displace residents, threaten agricultural livelihoods, compromise air quality, and threaten the health and well-being of thousands of Jamaican citizens. There is so much to say about this, because this area is also where a maroon village or town is. And so there's all kinds of politics around that as far as the Maroons is concerned, and not all of it is even positive, even when the Maroons are concerned, yeah? Another subject for another time. However, there has been a campaign to protect the cockpit country, and so far, it has stayed the mining companies, basically, all right? But we'll see how far that goes in the future, especially when Jamaica talk about becoming a republic, but we'll see. That's another subject for another time altogether. Lord mercy, tell them worry. Then now, another subject that relates to the entirety of Mama Africa, yeah? There's a 3-volume work called The Lost Crops of Africa. Volume 1 deals with grains, Volume 2 deals with fruits, and Volume 3 deals with vegetables, yeah? Listen carefully. The purpose of this report is to draw worldwide attention to traditional African cereals, and especially to their potential for expanding and diversifying African and world food supplies. Africa is seen by many observers as a basket case, a vast region incorporating more than 40 nations that appear unlikely to be able to feed its burgeoning population in the coming years. To many observers, there seems to be no solutions. Some have given up hope that anything can be done. What has been almost entirely overlooked, however, is that throughout the vast continent can be found more than 2,000 native grains, roots, fruits, and other plants. These have been feeding people for thousands of years, but being given no attention whatsoever today. We have called them the lost crops of Africa. The question is, why are these over 2,000 grains, roots, and fruits not being given any attention? The reason is because we live in neo-colonial economies. The reason is because under colonialism, African economies in Africa and in the diaspora became cash crop economies that were not concerned with feeding people and developing well-being and so on and so forth, but were concerned with creating cash crops for colonizer interests. Therefore, the natural organic development of African agriculture was retarded. So there's grains that have been growing for thousands of years that are no longer being given a look in. In a continent whereby millions of people are dying of starvation.
Come on.
Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
So I hope I've elucidated and given explanation to the concept of neo-colonialism as it exists in 2023. When I talk about 1950s, 60s, and 70s, we're talking about right here now, today. Is everybody with me? UHURU, UDONGO. You notice that all of these examples relate to land. Our relationship to land versus the colonizer's relationship to land, and which interest is dominating the scene. So the question is, how do we remedy this reality? Well, first and foremost, we have to delve into our indigenous culture to see if any solutions can be found. And we're going to do that now by delving deep into the wisdom of Baba Kimbwandende Kiabunseki Fukiao.
What? Yeah.
It's a holy name. Serious name that. Baba Kimbwandende Kiabunseki Fukiao. A Kikongo now ancestor. Al Kebela Knights, this is the Baba who wrote the book Kindezi. Yeah? And so we're going to read from another of his texts, African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo. So we have to understand, if land is the basis of independence, what does our indigenous culture have to teach us about the value of land? Good question?
Yeah.
One of the essential characteristics of the Congo system of property is its inalienability. There is no valuable condition that could change this inalienability of the ancestral land. Land was not a commodity to be bought and sold. Land was inalienable in the traditional system. Each domain was owned by a certain matrilineage going through the maternal line, which could indeed grant the use of a part of its area to a relative or even a foreign matrilineage. But this did not mean that it gave up its land rights. And you see the reference there. In the Fukiansi is the unwritten law. Now in this country they talk about the unwritten constitution. Yes? Well, they have unwritten constitution. We have Fukiansi. Are you following me?
Yeah.
All right? The unwritten law that the traditional land system, the Congo say, to sell land is to carry the mortal yoke. All right? What does that mean? In Kikongo, now follow me now. Wateke Ntoto, Wakanda Neti Ngororo. Give me a round of applause, man. One, two. From the Kikongo. From my Kikongo reading. You know what I mean? Yeah. Malengru also wrote about this same concept of the inalienability of land among other Bantu people of the Congo Basin. He says that the African communalistic concept of society was based on a very strong law, that of, quote, the indivisibility and inalienability of land. Whoever does not have access to land is dead.
Yeah.
No matter how rich he or she is. So we have to come to terms with the fact, African people, that as far as our culture teaches us, we are currently a dead people. We require resurrection in the spirit of Heru and Asar. We require resurrection.
Come on.
In another book by Baba Fukiao, he goes into the concept of the planet Earth within the Kikongo cosmology, and then explains how that cosmology informs the practice of farming, agriculture within Kikongo culture. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
I'm approaching the end, right? It says, interestingly, whilst the agriculture of the developed nation seems to be a monocrop by a cultivated spot, African farming has always remained mixed or polycrop. Never have African farmers attempted to sacrifice thousands of acres on one single crop.
No.
Year after year, a practice that could never work without chemicals and which slowly but surely undermines the health and the productivity of both soil and life. Listen carefully. There is a big issue at the moment in international agriculture because topsoil is severely malnourished. Yeah? in the Industrial Revolution produced agricultural tendencies that were centered around cash crops. When you continue to plant one single crop on land, it sucks the nutrients from the land without sufficiently replenishing it. Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
And so the industrialized world has created an ecological crisis because it is an economy based upon profit margins rather than people development. And so African people, where we are abundant because we have been severely colonized for hundreds of years, our ecology are among the most severely impacted by this reality. But our indigenous culture has a different system of agriculture. Such a farming system tends to also annihilate certain species of plants by causing a serious problem of balance in our terrestrial ecosystem. This situation is not possible in the African polycrop farming system, where once the crop is harvested, the soil or the field is always laid fallow for at least a year, during which the farmer moves to till a new spot next to the old one. This process is used to allow the land to renew its lost nutrients and its productive capacity. I'm not going to read the rest for the sake of time, but you get the point. Yeah? So the question then becomes, how do we develop systems to be able to redevelop and institutionalize said systems among us today? Is everybody with me?
Yeah.
If we're not engaging in that work, we're not solving the problem. We can give all the analysis in the world. I can come and talk neo-colonialism and break it down. You all have an understanding. If we're not asking, well, how do we remedy the land? We are not answering the question. We're not solving the problem. So let's give some examples of things that Africans are doing in today's world. I want to be real. All right? So first of all, I want to hail up Chief Fode and Sister Kenya Mansari. I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause just to allow the children to go for their session. I want to big up Sister Aitrisha and Sister Akiba for the work they're doing as well. Pardon? All under 10s. No, if they're older, let them listen to the message. And write a report after it. Tenam Warrior. By the way, Chief Fode, the brother who you see pictured here, will be featured on African Speaks of Our Kebalan on Kulichaguli Day, the 15th of May, and we're going to be honoring the grandson of Omwali Malcolm X, because that is the 10th anniversary, the 12th, I believe. The 9th, sorry, is the 10th anniversary since his assassination. Yeah? So bear that in mind, all right? Tenamwali. Chief Fode and Kenya, they're a married couple, by the way. They're Garveyites, they're in the UNIA ACL. They've also founders of an organization called the Black Star Action Network International, of which I'm also a member. They also have another they're a part of the Gullah Geechee people in like South and North Carolina in the United States of America. So they lead what is called the Gullah Nation of North America. And the Gullah Nation of North America and Basani, the Black Star Action Network International, collaborate to produce what is called the Tools to Seeds program, yeah? Which says, this year, we are seeking your support for our annual agricultural program, Tools to Seeds Farmers Assistance Program in Sierra Leone, West Africa. Since 2017, our organization has been dedicated to promoting sustainable agriculture practices and providing education and training to farmers in rural communities. With your support, we will be able to expand our program and reach even more communities in need this year. Your contribution will help us provide the following resources and services. So that's tools and seeds, training and education, and there's a couple more that I haven't listed here for the sake of time, yeah? But let's take in.
The Tools and Seeds Farmers Assistance Project is designed to create food security through cash crop sustainability. From 2 acres last year, this year we farmed 20 acres. And that is the first of 500 granted. And this land is granted on the basis that the farming results in development for the people and that is sustainable.
That's a little snippet, yeah? Now, you hear what if you didn't hear what he said properly, he said we've been granted 500 acres of land. When the program started, what was cultivated was 2 acres. The following year, it was 20 acres, yeah? And this land was granted because Brother Chief Fode and Sister Kenya went among a community in Maboya area in Sierra Leone and spoke to the people there. So you see what Baba Kim Wanden Nakiabon Sekifukia was talking about in terms of land is not bought and sold, but it can be, you can be given custodianship of the land because of their work with indigenous groups of Africans on the ground. The community granted 500 acres of land. And so what they're calling upon is that the international African community to fund the program, because what happens is Africans often have land but don't have access to seeds and tools, often because seeds are literally gold dust, but they're copyrighted, by patented, by corporations. Does that make sense? Yeah, and so it's difficult to develop markets out of indigenously grown African crops, and so we have to partner with communities and empower our indigenous communities with tools and seeds to be able to have just a small foothold into remedying the situation. Yeah. Then now, the bigger aspect of the program is to be able to create markets outside of Mama Africa or outside of Sierra Leone to be able to sell the produce. Does that make sense? Yeah. They began by working with the groundnut, and it wasn't just groundnut that was planted, but they invested specifically in groundnut because of its marketability. There's already an industry associated with it. Are you following me? Yeah. That's happening right now. I want people to understand there's work happening right now. Yeah. Yes? What, you want more? Yeah. Yeah? I know. I'm on time right now, so I'm beyond time at the moment. This is the brother by the name of Heru Ofori Atta, another Garveyite. Yeah? Member of the UNACO. Baba, if our Kemalanites, you would have heard Baba Senghor Baye speak this name many, many times. Yeah? He is the founder of the 25th Dynasty group, one of the most highly functioning Africans on the planet Earth today. I am very, very inspired by this African. Yeah? And so the problem, some of the work that the 25th Dynasty group is doing. The problem, the overwhelming majority of homes in Africa of all income stratas cannot rely on utilities for consistent electricity. If we're dealing with land, one of the major problems that we have to solve is housing. Yes? Yeah. Where are we going to house our people? And if you've been to Africa or the Caribbean, you know that sustainable and sufficient housing is a serious problem. Yes? Them have a thing called squatters problem in Jamaica. Yeah? People sleep on the street all over the African world. And even when we have homes, the homes are not fit for requirement. Absolutely. For developing and cultivating a family. So connected with our land concern, one of the most direct implications of custodianship of land is housing the people. Yeah? So as Pan-Africanists, we have to be concerned, how do we house our people? It's a good question to ask, right? Right. Beyond the lectures. Okay. So the overwhelming majority of homes in Africa of all income stratas cannot rely on utilities for consistent electricity and water. Solution. The 25th Dynasty Group is a one-of-a-kind property developer who secures land, builds markets, and sells homes in Africa that have a full renewable energy and water solution. Yeah? All homes are sold with pre-installed solar panels and off-grid lithium-ion battery systems, along with rooftop rainwater catchment systems connected to underground water storage cisterns. Yes? So oftentimes, there is no national water pump, yeah, for every home. So one of the solutions is give every home the capacity to independently catch, contain, and utilize water. One of the ways of doing that is to develop things, build things called cisterns under the home. So when the rain falls, the house catches the water, and you can use the water through a pump, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to read the rest for the sake of time, yeah? But this is literally employees of 25th Dynasty working in Ghana as it stands, yeah, in the year 2020. I'm not going to read it for the sake of time, but they successfully built this house with a cistern to test out the program, yeah? Yes,
good morning. We are here at 25th Dynasty Gambia. These are the blocks that we make. You see pavement blocks, you see interlocking blocks made out of concrete. This one is made out of earth material, which we call laterite. We are open for business. We have the factory up and running. This is our banner, 25th Dynasty Gambia. Let's go inside. That's our mound of sand. That's our mound of earth, soil, which we call laterite. We've got some gravel. We've got some other sand. And as you can see, we have the factory up and running. We've got the brothers making some more blocks. We're making the earth material blocks. See the conveyor belt going? And it's going. This is now the mixture that we made, laterite and small parts of cement and water to make the interlocking building blocks for construction. This is very inexpensive, cheaper than regular concrete blocks because we're using soil from the earth and very little cement. Usually you would use sand, you would use parts of gravel, you would use a lot of cement to make regular concrete building blocks, but we are changing the game and we are using the earth material blocks, and these are interlocking blocks, so you will no longer need the cement in between, such as what you see with this wall here. You see right here, you see the cement. We won't be needing that at all.
So this is in Gambia, yeah? And they're building blocks now we often when I deliver messages on Papa Garvey, we talk about Booker T. Washington and how they made the bricks, yeah, that built the school, yeah? So at the beginning you saw the Tuskegee Institute, right? That you saw them making bricks. And there's the goal is to basically be able to create tens of thousands of bricks every month, yeah, to sell them as well as build homes, yeah. There's more I could say on this, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to, except for this is 25th Dynasty now in Sierra Leone, and that brick is made.
This is sand and plastic blocks.
Did you hear what he said? The brick is made of sand and plastic. So making bricks is one of the ways to recycle plastic, which is very important because plastic is not a biodegradable substance, generally speaking. So there's a very big issue in the developing world in terms of plastic waste. If you've ever been to Africa on the continent, you know plastic, they're everywhere. Yeah? And so we need to find a way of recycling plastic. One of the ways of doing it is creating bricks. So 25th Dynasty has partnered with another group in Sierra Leone to produce and recycle plastic through the manufacturing of bricks. Brilliant. As a result of this good work, what you're seeing in the center here is a memorandum of understanding between 25th Dynasty and the Ministry of Basic Education, secondary education in Gambia. Brother Harry posted this on Facebook. He says, I'm emotional and humbled to announce that on the 5th of January 2023, we at the 25th Dynasty Group have secured an agreement with the government of Gambia to build rainwater catchment cisterns for the country's entire school system, covering approximately 3,500 schools and 700,000 students. Yeah? as we construct the systems, we will also be training and hiring apprentices, yeah? Yeah. Is everybody following the team? Yeah? Now, as Pan-Africanists, as Garveyites in particular, we have to be the ones primarily solving the problems of our people.
That's right.
Nature abhors a vacuum. And if we're not doing it, you're going to find some NGO from Britain and America come and doing it in the name of democracy, development and globalization. If we are not doing it in the name of liberation. Last example, listen carefully.
Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Omowale Africa, filmmaker, Pan-African organizer, and educator from the Philadelphia area. My work is deeply rooted in an unshakable love for African-American history and stories of Black resistance throughout the diaspora. For the past 6 years, I've lectured extensively on the role of cultural memory in restoring African sovereignty. In my new film, Hannibal, The Fight for Food Sovereignty in the South, we'll be exploring the connection between food sovereignty and ancestral memory by unlocking the link between African foodways and African resistance. My projects largely reflect a strong commitment to establishing and nurturing relationships across the African world. In the COVID years, I planted numerous seeds in the Garden of Black Liberation, with the most sacred being the RBG Centennial Conference. During this historic gathering, we invited all who share our African heritage to remember the 100-year anniversary of our red, black, and green flag, which honors the blood of our ancestors, their continued resistance, and struggle to reclaim the land. My next project, Hannibal, is going to explore the connection between African food and African resistance.
So you can watch the full video on YouTube. Yeah, his name is Omowale Africa with a K, and he's raising money to create this documentary series that does exactly what he says. Hannibal, the name of the film, is named after a now ancestor by the name of Hannibal Afrique, who was an activist in the United States of America, very well known to people like Mama Marimba Ani and so on, yeah? All right? He's here because he's developing propaganda around our relationship to food and land. Papa Garvey mastered the media of his time. We have to master the media of our time around our ideals. It's not enough for us to just deliver a presentation like I'm doing now. We have to propagandize to our people through various different means. Yeah? And the brother is doing that, so I implore brothers and sisters to support his work also. To end kings and queens, Papa Garvey says, there is no force like success. That is why the individual makes all effort to surround himself throughout life with the evidence of it. As of the individual, so should it be of the nation. As Pan-Africanist brothers and sisters, especially in this day and age, it's not enough for us to preach the good word. And I'm saying it as an African who rather enjoys preaching the good word. Yeah? It's a very good start, but it's not sufficient for the task at hand. We have to be able to demonstrate the viability of what we say we stand for in practice. Papa Garvey himself, by designation of his friends as well as his foes, is one of the greatest orators the world has ever seen. And even he taught us that there is no force like success. Papa Garvey himself didn't consider his fantastic oration to be sufficient for the task at hand. He knew he had to purchase the Black Star Line steamship. He knew he had to purchase land. He knew he had to build schools and businesses. And say, look, my people, see it here. We are grow. We are built. So if we're going to cultivate the consciousness and the character of liberation as Pan-Africanists, those who say we know, to meet the challenges of the now, we have to ask and answer some different kinds of questions.
Yeah.
Baba Huey P. Newton says that our people learn through participation and observation, which means that we have to be about the business of developing institutions that our people can observe and participate in.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I hope that with the examples that I've given, it shed some light on the kind of work and the kinds of challenges that we who are in the movement need to take on if this century is going to be a century of African liberation. I thank you for listening to the word. Give thanks, brothers and sisters. 1091.
Pan-Afrikanism.